Welcome to Sarasota County Schools. My name is Joe Binswanger, and I'm blessed to tell you that I'm the IT Director for Sarasota County Schools. Proud to tell you also that I am a Sarasota native, born and raised, product of the Sarasota County school system. My wife is a 5th grade teacher in the district, my mom's a high school English teacher in the district, and my stepmom's a retired guidance counselor from the district. Both my children are students here in Sarasota County Schools. I share all that with you because education, specifically in Sarasota County, is incredibly personal to me. And the success of the technology as it supports our staff and students is something that is constantly on my mind. There's nothing I dread more than to get home after a long day and have my little girl run down the driveway to say, "Dad, guess what didn't work at school today?" So every day we do the very best that we can in the IT department to provide the very best support and technology to our staff and students. So I thought we'd start with a little bit of fun, and we're going to play technology by the numbers in IT for Sarasota County Schools. So the very first question, and you can jot this down on a little piece of paper if you want to, or just put it in your mind. How many email messages do you think are sent on average to Sarasota County Schools email addresses or received to Sarasota County School email addresses every year? Got your answer? That's right, 14.6 million email addresses every year. It's a lot. We're going to talk more about that later on. Web page requests annually. So let's define web page requests. Go ahead and write it down if you want to. But web page requests are any web browser that's opened up and a website is went to counts as one web page request. And keep in mind, this is really in a 10-month period because of the summer months being off. Web page requests annually on the Sarasota County School Board network on Sarasota County Schools computers. Got that guess? 6 billion. Were you close? I bet not. DOE data elements transmitted. Now this one's probably a little bit different and new to you. DOE data elements are the data elements that we transmit to the Florida Department of Education. The state reporting function for the school district is housed within the IT department. We have a phenomenal state reporting department. In fact, they are consistently audited as one of the top state reporting departments in the entire state. And I kid around with them, though they don't think it's funny. If they were to make a mistake, it's typically a 2 comma mistake. And what I mean by that is first comma in the thousands place, second comma in the millions place, meaning millions of dollars that the district would not get in funding. But the great news is they do a tremendous job. But they have to go through every data element that we transmit every year before we do to make sure that we continue to be consistently top rated. So how many data elements do you think that's going to be? 56.6 million data elements every year transmitted to the Department of Education. That is the source of our funding across the entire district. Computing devices in our schools and departments. Now, I've put a lot of big numbers up here on the board. Here's what I can tell you. We're not talking millions or billions anymore. And let's define computing devices. Computing devices are defined as desktops, laptops, or tablet devices. 41,000 devices across all of our schools and in departments in use, supporting education each and every day. The final number that we're going to play with today is one of my favorites. IT staff supporting our students and schools across the district. Let's talk about what makes up IT staff. IT staff ranges from the school-based tech supports that we have at every school, to our state reporting team, which we talked about already, to instructional technology support, the network team, telephones, intercoms, the scoreboards at the football fields on Friday night, our security team that deals with cybersecurity as well, and our operations team that handles the transmittal of the DOE data elements that we talked about before. So, do you have your number? 104 amazing people. But I want to put this in a little bit of context for you. Every elementary school in the district has one tech support. Every middle school has, in essence, 1.5, and all of our high schools have 2. And that compromises 49 of the 104 people. So that means we have 55 people doing a whole bunch of other stuff besides the people at the schools. Now I will tell you, way back when I first started in the field of education, I actually started as a first grade teacher, which now feels like a lifetime ago. And when I first began, my mom gave me some very sage advice. She said, the two most important people you want to have a very close relationship with at your school are the head custodian and the principal secretary. I would offer you now there are 3 people. Still the principal secretary, still the head custodian, but that tech support, you want to be your best friend. So let's talk a little bit more about technology. This is a quote that I truly love and would offer you to think about for a minute. Technology is only technology to those that were born before it. Here's something I keep in mind on a regular basis. My kids, they will never know the time that they can't pick up a device, probably in their pocket, and FaceTime or video chat with their cousins in Tennessee. That wasn't normal for me. That would have been incredible magic as I grew up. A graphic that I like to put up that just kind of reminds us of the fact that technology isn't necessarily something new, it's just a new way we do something we've done before. Now, you may be thinking, I'm not sure about all this technology and what is its impact on education. And I can understand why you might be thinking that. But I'd offer you a couple things. First, our kids, the ones that we're responsible for helping to be successful in the world they're expected to live in, is going to have technology a part of it. And if we don't take the opportunity to embrace that technology and help them learn how to effectively use it, and when is the right time to have it out and on, and when is the right time to have it off and away, we're not preparing them for the world they're going to be expected to be successful in. And wouldn't it be better that they learn the right time to use their cell phone in your classroom instead of when they have their first job and end up getting fired? It's just something to think about. The other thing that I'd offer you as we talk about technology and its role in education is some of it's just outside of our control. And I want to give you 2 quick examples. The first is Florida Statute 1006.29 parentheses 3. It was passed several years ago. And what it states is that every Florida district must spend 50% of their instructional material funds on digital instructional materials. So let me go a little bit deeper with that. What are instructional materials? Well, they're textbooks, traditionally, or workbooks. Well, if every district has to spend 50% of those funds on digital instructional materials, that means textbooks as we know them must change because the funding is going that way. Later on, I'm going to show you how Sarasota County is going to begin to address those needs. Because unless I'm going to spend my time influencing state legislators and lobbying them to change that, that's just the reality. So it becomes my role and technology's role to find ways to make that successful for our staff and students, and we're going to show you that. The other thing to keep in mind is graduating seniors have a different graduation requirement to get their diploma than just a few years ago. Every graduating senior now must have taken at least 1 course online to graduate. If they don't take 1 course online to graduate, they don't get their diploma, plain and simple. Now, you may be having mixed emotions about that statement, but going back to what I said before about students being prepared for the world they're going to be expected to be successful in, where do much of our college courses or even vocational type courses take place now? Online. So why shouldn't they take 1 credit online in high school to get used to that learning environment before they go on to post-secondary opportunities? A few key areas we're going to cover today: the employee portal, district email, security awareness, classroom technologies, and maybe most importantly, whoa, I got questions and I need help. What do I do? First, our district webpage. What I'm going to specifically focus on today is the employee portion of this. Now, fair warning, Web pages are dynamic and change. When this is being videoed, this is what the web page looked like at the time. It may look a little different now when you go to it, but most of the key areas will continue to be there. Two things I really want to point out on this page. First, the My SCS key. That is short for My Sarasota County Schools .net rather, sorry. And if you really think of it, it is a key into all of the things that you'll need as a staff member here at Sarasota County Schools. Later in the presentation, we're going to go in more in depth with that, but I point that out here because on just about every web page, whether it's for the district or the schools, you'll see that little key somewhere on the corner of the page if you ever need to go to it. Now, the other area that I really want to focus on the employee portion is the part that is being highlighted here, the employee portal. This is where you, as an employee, are going to go to get all of your pertinent information related to paychecks, W-2s, certificate of absences, time accrued, all of those type things. Now, you'll log in with your A number and your password you use for your computer, or you can log in with your A number and the last four of your social. If you log in with the last four of your social, I highly encourage you to change that PIN number immediately upon the first login. Why? The reality is, to get someone's last four digits of their social security number is not that difficult in today's day and age. It is a standard across industry that initial login is a set number sequence that most people know, so that's why we use the last four of your social. But there's a link on the left side that says change PIN. You click on it once logged into the portal, and you can change it to any four-digit number that you're comfortable with. I cannot emphasize enough. In fact, the payroll department pays me good money for this next part that I'm going to do. We do not print W-2s and paychecks. We do not print W-2s and paychecks. Sarasota County Schools does not print W-2s and paychecks. In case you were wondering, we don't print W-2s and paychecks. Why do I say that ad nauseum? Because come tax time, or if you wanted to check your paycheck stub, you're going to call payroll and say, where's my W-2 or paycheck? And they're going to let you know, we don't print W-2s and paychecks. You can simply log into the employee portal and get all of that information. In addition to that, there's also a paycheck calculator where if you are interested in changes to your deductions, how would that impact your pay, you can play with that in there without actually having to make any real impact on your paycheck. Now, I'm going to ask you to do me a quick favor. At the end of this segment, you're going to find out my email address and information. Would you email me the bank you bank at, your username and password? Sounds preposterous, right? Well, if you give anyone your A number and password, you've given them access to your employee portal, which has all your direct deposit information. One step closer to them accessing your banking information. Treat your A number and your password, or your A number and your PIN, just like you would your banking account information, and you won't put yourself or anyone else in any harm's way. District email. Every person in the district gets an email address. It's your first name dot last name at sarasotacountyschools.net. Two things I want to point out here. We have a phenomenal network administrator in the IT department that everybody under the sun knows is Skip, but his parents named him Floyd. Nobody knows him as Floyd. When Skip was first hired, his email address was floyd.johnson@sarasotacountyschools.net. And when everybody went to email Skip, nobody could find him. So your email address originally will be whatever you put on your application. Later on in the presentation, I'll show you how to submit a help ticket, and that's where you can change or submit to have your email address changed to a name that people are most comfortable knowing you as. But you need to know that it'll originally be whatever you put on your application. The other thing that you need to know is that you may speak to a more veteran staff member, and they may say, oh no, email addresses aren't that. They're first name underscore last name at sarasota.k12.fl.us. So what that tells me is they're somebody who's worked for the district for more than 10 years. They also don't read the email notifications that we send out because that hasn't been our email configuration for over 10 years now. but they continue to think it is. That email address won't work for you. This is the one that'll work for you. The old one will continue to work for them. I mention this because every once in a while we run into a problem with that, and I don't want you to be one of those people that do. Now, a few things to keep in mind as you use your email. Remember, 14.6 million emails on average every year. That's a lot. Did you know that Sarasota County Schools is required to archive those for 10 years? 10 years because of sunshine record loss. So, and did you know that the moment you click send, or the moment it hits your inbox like that, we've already archived it? I bring that up for this very important reason. If it is not something that you would feel comfortable, blown up, billboard size, hanging over your house, your mama's house, your grandmama's house, your kid's house, the person you love the most, house, don't put it in an email and click send. Think of the times that you've looked at the newspaper on an article and some outlandish thing has been printed there because somebody put it in an email. Whatever you put in there is subject to public records law. But let's dig into that just a little bit deeper. What about student records? So I told you way back in the day, I started as a first grade teacher in education. My very first year teaching, I had a little boy, Johnny. No kidding, Johnny gave me the opportunity every day to think creatively about my classroom management strategies. If you don't know what that means, Johnny was just a little turd. That's no other way to put it, all right? And so there were days that Johnny absolutely frustrated me. And Cindy Self was my mentor teacher at the time. And fortunately, Cindy taught right next door to me. So I could go over and talk to Cindy about the things to deal with Johnny. But what if Cindy was across campus and I couldn't go over and talk to her? And I emailed her, "Oh, Johnny was such a turd today." Would that be subject to public records law? If Johnny's mom was convinced that I had it out for Johnny, would she think, "Oh, I want to get proof"? Could she come in and request that? Absolutely. Would we as the district have to turn that over? Absolutely. But let's take it one step further. What if I was emailing questions to my mentor teacher about Johnny's 504 or IEP plans? Would those be subject to public records law? Yes and no. If you've ever watched 60 Minutes or 2020 or some type of news expose and you see where they've requested government information and part of the information has been redacted or blacked out, that is what we are subject to as well. Student information related to 504s, IEP, student records would be redacted out before it's handed over. But Johnny's just a turd, not redacted out. Keep that in mind before you click send. It may save you a whole lot of headaches down the road. Security awareness. Quite honestly, I've been doing this presentation for a number of years now. And when I first began this presentation, security awareness was something we briefly spoke about. If I had my way, I'd have you watch hours of information about this. Why? K-12 organizations and health care organizations are tied for the #1 targets of identity thieves across the world. Why? Because of the massive amount of personally identifiable information we house in our databases, along with millions and millions of dollars in transactions and funding every year. To get into our systems means a lot of money for some really bad people. You help to hold the gates closed in that happening by guarding your login information very correctly, not falling for scams, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Quick question on this. What do you think is the most valuable information in our entire district to identity thieves? Have an idea? Were you thinking kindergarten students? I bet you weren't. But here's why. A kindergartner has 13 years before they are going to start applying for schools, scholarships, credit lines. That's 13 years that an identity thief has to use that kindergartner's information. So you may be thinking, well, it's probably more about the bookkeepers because they do all that transaction stuff, or those district administrators or principals because they're dealing with big schools, not me as an individual classroom teacher. We all play a role in protecting our kids and their identities. Passwords. So I told you before, how many of you have that banking information ready to turn over to me? Hopefully none of you. We used to have a joke in the IT department. Let's go on a field trip and let's start looking under keyboards for the number of passwords that we can find written down on Post-it notes, and you get $1 for every one. And how many lunches can we buy with those? The good news is we don't find very many Post-it notes anymore. Guard your password. And more importantly than that, we will never, ever, 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 never, 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 ever, never, not once, not one time, never, ever, 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 I promise you, not that single time, ever send an email to you asking you to click on a link to validate your username and password. It will never happen. But I promise you, at some point, you will get a phishing email from somebody that is trying to get you to click on a link and turn over your password. Now you may be kind of smiling to yourself and say, I won't fall for that. But they prey on your fear. It'll say something like, if you don't click on this link in the next 24 hours and validate your password, your administrator will be notified and you will be subject to termination. It's a lie. They're preying on your fear to act. Remember this moment as I sit here and say to you, we will never, ever, 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 never, 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 ever, 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 not one single time, ask you to click on a link to validate your username and password. It just won't happen. When that comes, just delete the email. The security team's already working on it. Blue Coat. It's our internet filtering application that we use to protect staff and students not only from websites that maybe they shouldn't be seeing, but also malware that may be coming in. Part of the reason we have Blue Coat in place is because of SIPA, the Child Internet Protection Act. It states that school districts need an internet filtering solution in place. But as part of that, it also makes school districts eligible for E-rate funding, which is an FCC-provided program through the federal government that allows districts to recoup certain expenses equivalent to their free and reduced lunch rate. So right now, at the taping of this, Sarasota is around 51% free and reduced lunch. That means of our telephone bills, internet bills, and certain network hardware, we are able to bring back 50% of whatever we spent on that back into the district. What does that mean? That means on average, we recoup $400,000 to $450,000 every year back into the district, which means those funds are then being able to be spent on classroom instruction and other areas that wouldn't be available otherwise. But quite honestly, the biggest reason I think we have Blue Coat in place is because it's our job to. And what do I mean by that? So I have a little girl, and I have a son also, and I love them both equally, but I always think of my little girl in this regard. It is my job as her dad to protect her eyes and heart from things that she has no business seeing, ever, quite honestly. And for all the wonderful things the internet has to offer our kids and our teachers in terms of learning and taking them to places they may never have an opportunity to do otherwise, there's also some really bad stuff out there. And when I work with our security team about our Blue Coat filtering, quite honestly, if 5 is the perfect place to have it, I always ask them to have it turned at 5.5. Why just a little bit higher? Because you can always submit a help request, which I'll show you here in a minute, to get something opened up. But once my little girl or any number of students across our district see it on the computer screen, I can never take that back from their eyes and heart. So I'd always rather have it just a little bit stricter than a little bit laxed. So there will come a time, if you use the internet within the Sarasota County Schools network, that a site will be blocked, that you'll think, why on earth are they blocking it? And there's a reason, and maybe it's because our filters are tuned up just a little bit too high. But think of the little girls and little boys that we're protecting, and submit your help ticket and know we'll get that site opened up for you real fast. Phishing emails. We've talked a little bit about this already, but I can't emphasize it enough. Phishing emails come in all shapes, sizes, and ways, and they are all about getting you to turn over confidential information. And it could be because it's such a good deal, or because they're preying on your fear or your anxieties. the best advice I can give you is before you click on any link and you're not sure, ask someone you trust. I told you already, there's a tech support at every school. They are so used to fielding these type of questions. Email me, call me. I would much rather you ask the question ahead of time than save yourself hours and hours of headache and heartbreak later on down the road. Just ask someone who's been a victim of identity theft. It is a horrendous thing to go through. And let me ask you this. While we do an incredible amount to continue to keep the district protected and safe from cyber threats, would you want your name to be the headline that says, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so allowed Sarasota County Schools network to be breached and data loss was because of you? Just ask the question. We're here to help. Always remember that old saying, if it's too good to be true when we're talking about phishing, it's probably too good to be true. And finally, if you weren't sure, we will never, ever, ever, ever ask you for a password in your email. Ever. Classroom technologies. Sarasota County is just blessed beyond measure with the cornucopia of technology-related tools that we have available to our staff and students to enhance their education. I'm only going to cover a few today. Quite honestly, what I'm going to share with you aren't the crystals forming on the snowflake falling on the tip of the iceberg, but at least it'll give you some awareness of some of the things that are available to our staff and our students across the district. And if you're a bus driver right now thinking, well, why is he sharing this with me? Well, let me tell you, this is a community school district. We are all part of what helps to make our students great. And part of that is knowing what they have available. So when you're in your neighborhood and one of your neighbors says to you, why do they have these interactive displays in classrooms? Do they really need it? I had chalkboards, they were fine when I was a kid. You'll be able to give them a meaningful answer as I explain this to you. What you see behind me is an active panel. It's a 70-inch backlit LED display that actually can handle 10 simultaneous points of touch. So one of the very favorite pictures I have hanging in my office is a picture of 4 third-grade boys all at the active panel together, racing with their fingers as they're working out double-digit multiplication problems. Think about it. It's like a giant iPad, but that 10 little fingers can all be touching at the exact same time. Now, what I think is pretty cool about this is a couple things. One, active panels were in our last year of replacing all interactive whiteboards in our classrooms. Here's just an amazing fact I want you to think about for a second. This year's graduating class of seniors, if they started as kindergartners in Sarasota County schools, they have never known education without an interactive display at the front of their classroom. It started originally as interactive whiteboards, and now it's transformed into interactive displays. These displays can do anything that the teacher can imagine them to do. And one of the really cool things about them is we have kindergarten teachers who drop the display down so their kindergartners can come up and interact with the curriculum on the board. But then we also have IB nuclear radiation and astronomy students interacting with the board as well and the curriculum that's on it and the lessons that teachers are creating. If you may be wondering, wow, that might be overwhelming to start to use, how do I even do it? You can simply go to the professional development system and sign up. We're always offering courses on Active. Look for Active Inspire, Active Boards, Active Basics, they're there. You can also check with your ITOT, which is a teacher that is designated on every campus just to help teachers with questions they might have about these type of things. Here's some advice I want to give you. If you remember, I mentioned Cindy Self was my mentor teacher, and when I first began, I was kind of overwhelmed to be going into this first grade classroom, and I had the responsibility of making sure all these kids could read before the end of the first grade year. And I was asking Cindy questions about it, and she said, Joe, I wish I could tell you there was a magic bag of dust that I could give you, and you could sprinkle on the kids, and they'd just automatically be amazing readers. But if you do the best practices that you've learned to do and stay diligent every day with it, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, you'll look out and you'll have this classroom full of independent readers. And I was young, I didn't know any better, so I said, okay, Cindy, I'm going to get to work. And that's exactly what I did. And I will always remember the Monday before Thanksgiving break, I looked out, and sure enough, I had a classroom full of independent readers. Technology is honestly not that much different. I wish I had a magic bag of dust that I could sprinkle on you through the screen right now, and you would be technology wizards. But there isn't. You just have to be willing to try it. Now, our kids today, they got no problem pushing buttons and seeing what happens. I'd offer you to think about this for a second. Educators in general like to be the experts of their curricular area. They don't like to not know something. Technology can be one of those things that they don't know and aren't as comfortable with. So instead of jumping feet first in, they back away from it because they don't want to look foolish in front of their students. I would offer you the opportunity to teach kids how to go through productive struggle. And maybe it's through technology. Maybe you're not perfect at it at first. If you have questions about it, chances are you have a room full of experts in your students, right? And they would be more than happy to help you with it. But if you're willing to embrace that technology, I'm willing to bet that it'll make a meaningful difference for your kids. A couple other things I want to point out with classroom technologies. I mentioned mysarasotacountyschools.net earlier. This is one of potential login pages. After you log in, what the page may look like. It's a series of tiles, and it identifies the user based on their user credentials when they log in. So when it logs in, it sees me as Joe Binswanger, the Director of IT. And these are the tiles, not these specifically, but the tiles that should be appropriate for me as the director. I mentioned before my wife's a 5th grade teacher. When she logs in, she sees tiles that are appropriate to her as a 5th grader. My daughter's an elementary student, and my son's a middle schooler. Their tiles are presented what should be appropriate for them. There are a couple tiles that I do want to point out that everybody has. The first is Office 365. Every staff and student member has a full subscription into Office 365 for the duration of either their education or employment with Sarasota County Schools. What does that mean? Well, it means you have full access to the full Office web apps that are available. It also means you have a terabyte of cloud storage space that goes with you everywhere. One of the things that I'm encouraging my kids to do is to begin to build their digital portfolio of their educational career in OneDrive in Office 365. Why? Because one day they'll apply to college. At least I'm hoping so. And when they submit their work to the college admissions board, how cool would it be that they can go all the way back to when they were a 3rd grader on a book report and show how they progressed from 3rd grade work to their senior English work. It's a complete digital portfolio. In addition to the terabyte of cloud storage space on OneDrive, they can download up to 5 copies of the full Office suite on a personal computer completely for free. That can save a family a lot of money on their personal computers. And there is an incredible amount of online collaboration space for students to work together and to keep their notes organized. Teachers are using it more and more every day to allow students to collaborate and work together to create even more magnificent work projects in their classroom. The next piece that I want to point out, Blackboard Learn is our learning management system. You can take professional development through it, but you as a teacher can also have the opportunity to set up your own blended learning environment. We have 1st grade teachers who have begun to set up blended learning environments where students are actually writing on message boards within their own class, doing blogs, submitting work as 1st graders. Our high school English teachers have the ability to set up drop boxes where the moment a paper is turned in, it's checked for plagiarism. Think about that. Now, some English teachers use that as a penalty. Other English teachers use it as a learning environment to conference with their kids so they learn better ways to cite work so it doesn't come up with a high plagiarism score. And for my facilities folks that may be watching today, all of your OSHA training is done through Blackboard. Safari Montage is the next tile I want to point out to you. So you may be familiar with on-demand or Amazon Prime video services or anything like that. Well, what Safari Montage is our on-demand, if you will, of video collections that are all aligned to state standards, keywords, grade levels. Many of them come with additional supplementary material. You simply log on. You can actually bring the videos from Safari directly into your Blackboard course, so students don't have to leave the Blackboard environment to watch those videos. They can watch them at home, they can watch them in the classroom. The thing that I really appreciated about this situation is this. So when I was a classroom teacher, well, actually, let me give you a real-life example. This was many years ago, but I was in a 4th grade teacher's classroom at Laurel Nokomis, and she was doing a phenomenal job going through her lesson with her kids. They were covering a novel, and they got to this point in the novel where they started to talk about lemurs, and she lost the class. They're like, lemurs? What? I don't get, what's a lemur? And she was trying to describe it as sort of this funky raccoon ferret combination thing, and she said, you know what, hold on a minute. And she went to her active board and she minimized her flip chart, which the lesson was built on. And she opened up Safari Montage and she searched, and she logged in and searched lemurs. And in a 90-second span, she went from a class that was completely lost on what lemurs were to a class that had watched a 45-second clip on lemurs interacting in their natural habitat in Madagascar. And they're like, oh, you're right, it is kind of like a weird raccoon, right? Impacting the teachable moment. Now, when I was in the classroom, if that happened, I would have had to have waited till my planning period lunch or after school to go to the media center to see if we had a VHS tape or a laser disc that I could then come back, find the spot, show my kids. Teachable moment, long gone. By the time I show it, they're like, lemurs, huh? What are you talking about? Right? The great thing is all of this has been vetted ahead of time. And it ranges from pre-K appropriate material to high school physics and beyond. Check it out. I think you'll find some really valuable instructional material in there. The last thing that I really want to point out on my SCS for you is where the pink arrow's pointing to. It's the textbook tab down there. Now, remember before I told you about that legislation and how digital instructional materials have to be the way districts are going? Well, this is one of the ways we're solving it. So, through some amazing staff members in the IT department, we do a whole bunch of programming that makes some really magic happen. And what I mean by that is this. Every night, we have a program that goes out and checks all of the student schedules across the entire district. And it looks and it says, Johnny Smith, you're enrolled in Algebra 1. You should have this textbook assigned to you. And it drops the digital version of that right here into his textbook. Now, if Johnny that afternoon goes and sees his guidance counselor and says, you know, algebra just isn't working out, maybe I could try statistics instead, and she removes algebra from his schedule and puts statistics in place, that night the query goes out, it pulls his access to the algebra book out, and the next morning when he comes in, the digital textbook is there for statistics. Now, let's take it one step further. So I told you my wife is an elementary school teacher. Well, it wasn't that long ago during pre-planning week that I would spend at least one night of that pre-planning week sitting on the couch with her, helping her get all of her kids for that year loaded into the various digital instructional materials that we had available through textbooks, because she had to do that manually. And then also associate them with her teacher materials in those digital instructional materials as well. Well, now, once the schedules are set up at all the schools, your students are automatically loaded into all of your digital instructional materials for you. So that means you're not spending time loading them in. Instead, you're spending time creating meaningful lessons for those kids. So we got all this stuff going on. What do you do for help, right? And I told you we have somebody at the school and you should be, close with them. Chocolates, cupcakes, cookies, But we're going to ask that you not do that. We're going to ask that you go to our help desk. And, you can go to it by picking up any phone in the district and dialing for help, any phone outside the district, 861-HELP, sending an email to help@SarasotaCountySchools.net. From that Employees tab I showed you earlier, there's a link to help. And on the desktop of every district computer, there's a green easy button for help. Why? Well, it's simple. What you're asking for help for may not be something that your on-site person can do. If you're having problems with your phone in your office or your classroom, the on-site person can't help with that unless it's just because you didn't plug the cable in, which I hate to tell you happens more often than you'd think. But instead, it needs to go to our telephone guys. And the moment you put a help request in, it gets routed to them and then gets queued up for them. You can always call the help desk and escalate a ticket after you've put it in if it hasn't been responded to in a timely manner that you think is appropriate. But we ask that you do this because for every one time that you stop your person on campus and touch them on the shoulder and say, oh, by the way, I'm having a problem with, I promise you 30 other times that's happened. And it's just an unfair expectation for them to remember so many oh, by the ways. It also queues up for them that comes to their phone or tablet that they can continue to service their entire campus thing. So we've covered a lot today. Really excited for you to be a part of what I think is not just the best district in the state, but honestly the best district in the world. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me. The amazing people that are doing this video right now are going to flash my email address here at the bottom of the screen, so I don't have to say it. And I welcome you to Sarasota County Schools, a district I can say I've been proud to be a part of since I was knee-high to a grasshopper throughout my entire career. Thank you.